We're going to start in about a minute, folks, so. Folks, we're going to begin because we have a pretty heavy agenda
And a special guest.
and a special guest, yeah.
Did the card make it down for Alex? He didn't know anything about it. Is it down? Do you know if the card for Alex is here? That's as far as you got.
So,
Where? Where is it? Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
We will.
You just literally walked in the door. Literally just now. Thank you. Would you like to be the first?
could we have an approval of today's agenda? All right, thank you. Minutes, any corrections or additions? Changes? Subtractions? Nothing? How about an approval of the minutes then?
Make a motion.
Are you saying you're making one?
Making a motion to approve the minute.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I will move into the, oh, there is a letter coming around. If you could sign it, it would be appreciated.
And there's also a card that's
And a card will be circulating as well.
separate.
So let me start with the obvious top story, the obvious very sad situation in the resignation of Andy Byford. This was the second time, and this one is for sure going to stick. I believe, and it has been borne out, that this is largely the product of the reorganization and how the agency presidents would be relegated to just running their agencies, their subways and buses in the case of Andy Byford. And he has been long interested, in fact, brought in Pete Tomlin, a world-renowned signal expert, to help upgrade our signals, which is in progress. CBTC installation is moving forward on Queens Boulevard, on 8th Avenue, on Culver, and plans for elsewhere. And Pete, of course, has also submitted his resignation. But you know, Andy and I have spoken. He will hopefully stop in around 12:30, and we can all give him a standing ovation. He's obviously very saddened about the situation, but he's still upbeat. He's a really fabulous guy. He has made substantive changes in the short 2-year stint that he has been here. And I have, as somebody that normally sends Sally Librera, the head of Subways, 8 to 10 emails a week on either incorrect announcements or incorrect signage. In fact, just 2 days ago, I noticed that on some R142s, they still show at Lexington Avenue and 59th Street the ability to transfer to a Q train there, which hasn't been there for years. So they were shocked. But Andy has instituted, and Sally, scripts for conductors, so the accuracy of the information you receive is not subject to the luck of the draw on which conductor you happen to get. They now know something. In fact, the other day, instead of complaining, I really gave kudos to a particular conductor who not only had every geo down and told you how to manage to get around them, but in light of the Central Park West water main, was even up to minute on what that would mean to travelers and how you could get around that. This conductor was fabulous, and they're going to give him, I think, a special certification.
Did they have anything to do with Aquafina making the announcements?
Yes,
on
they
the-
had something to do with that.
on the
Andy
numbers
did
there?
say that that's greatly annoying to some and interesting to
Oh,
others.
It was wonderful.
It's an experiment.
It's wonderful, positive PR, I think. And can I ask you one more question about Andy before he gets here? There is a rumor going around, at least among the people who rumor with me, that Andy may be taking the position of the head of London Transit, because the person who has it has now left to redevelop, I don't know, the biggest castle or something like that. I don't know.
I have not heard that.
Well, I'm just letting you know.
Lots of rumors.
Would it be okay to ask him, or
I don't believe
leave it out?
he will not tell you on the record. So
Okay, fine.
yeah.
Even off the record, he won't
Yeah,
say anything.
Andy has been instrumental in initiating the group station manager program, whereby each manager has 15 to 20 stations and are responsible for keeping them up to snuff. And that definitely shows in the condition of stations. So many great initiatives that Andy has put into place. He is the one, in my memory, and I've been doing this a long time, the one president of New York City Transit that the man and the woman in the street knows their name, knows their face, knows their voice. It's just, there aren't words, obviously, but hopefully most of his team will stay, which would be a great tribute to Andy to carry out his initiatives, to keep moving forward. I have spoken to others who are now in positions of power, and they intend to keep this progress moving forward. Obviously, making stations accessible is now enshrined in the capital program. You'll hear about the next group of stations today. Speaking of which, now that the 168th Street elevator has been repaired, is Edith in the room? Oh, yes, she is. She knows that. Yeah. 191st Street is next, the deepest station in the system.
Except there was an error in the presser.
There was an error, and I sent that to Abby. I never got a response, but it said replacement of the station as opposed to the deepest elevator.
Shuttle is running from 6 to 6 on Sunday,
It did, yes.
and it's 6 to 10
Yeah.
every day.
Yes, that's much better. So there were a couple of mistakes in the presser, but obviously accessibility is on everybody's mind and will continue big time. In fact, in the capital program, the final joining of one of the last places in the system that lines cross but don't have real transfers, Livonia Junius, will be getting the complete connection enclosed 24/7 and made accessible. So that's good news. Yes.
I got my mic. Thank you, Drew. Just to let you know, yesterday at the ACT meeting, they were very pleased about it, because Leo and Lisa and Edith are sitting, that's where I was sitting. They were really pleased to see that connection, because a lot of the people in that community over there, and I could tell you that elected officials over there are really pleased to see this, especially Broadway Junction. That's gonna be a,
Yes, all the platforms will be made.
and
Yeah.
all I can say is, wow.
Yeah, that's a big one, because obviously the L train platforms are way high up in the air compared to even the J, Z, and obviously the AC are downstairs. But so that's good. Um,
The envelope didn't make it.
um, and East New York Station of the Long Island Railroad could use a lot of work too. While we're talking about that,
That's being announced on Friday.
that's really good, because that's a forgotten place. That's a foreboding place, and an enclosed connection to the Atlantic Avenue L train station there would be even better.
I don't know what they're announcing, but they're gonna announce something.
Railroad. Friday, they're doing the Nostrand opening of that station. So that's
So that works over. Good.
that's something. But regarding East New York, the ADA, Long Island Railroad ADA Committee is still trying to work on East New York Station. They are still doing construction under there. Long Island Railroad is trying to do a study to try to do a more continuing ramp. They are testing out some stuff. We should have more details in February 10th meeting.
Great. Speaking of some of Andy's initiatives, ridership has started to once again grow. It was going down for over a year. On-time performance continues to ratchet up. It's approaching 85%. It's at 84 and change, depending on what month you look at, but that's pretty amazing. And the Save Safe Seconds program, which is getting trains out of stations more quickly, figure it out. If it's 10 or 15 seconds shorter wait at a station and you have 40 stations on a line, that means the train is making back so much time that it can leave its other terminal on time and thus prevent gaps in service. So this is really great stuff. And, we have to have this progress continue. The other thing about Andy, which will not continue, is bad news was so much more easily absorbed with a British accent, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, couldn't resist that one. That's a good question.
Can I just, so I was at the joint legislative hearing yesterday in Albany.
Bless you. You were there 12 hours or
I
something?
was there for 12 hours.
Oh, my God.
There were a lot of the legislators had questions about the continuity and about continuing to keep the gains that have been made. And that was heard loud and clear. And in fact, Brad Hoyleman said, when you can announce a new train daddy or train mama?
Yeah. So you've probably all heard about the new master plan for Penn Station and the acquisition of a city block between 32nd and 31st Streets to facilitate the installation of 8 additional tracks.
31st and 30th.
Yeah, that's right, 31st and 30th. Yeah, 32nd is already done. Anyway, this will be, I don't know if lawsuits will delay this, but it's eminent domain, and there are quite a few properties there that might fight this, but the goal is to put additional 8 tracks in Penn Station, which is great considering Penn Access of Metro North will be coming in there, and eventually Hudson Line of Metro North. They are talking about
But there's no
What a-
service plan.
No, there is no service plan, and if we don't fix the Hudson River tunnels, this is really all for naught, obviously, because all rail traffic will stop. So that is really important. Gateway or a similar plan. Certainly, the repair of the 2 Hudson tunnels has to be ongoing and is so vital. The East River tunnels are coming. They will be. Well, actually, the Sandy work will happen, and some other things will happen for them, and I believe this will be a joint venture of both Amtrak and the Long Island Railroad. So that will happen, obviously, after East Side Access, because that will free those tunnels up from some of the Long Island trains, which will then be going to Grand Central, and they can complete this work. So that is something to look forward to.
Andrew, can I ask, on the East River tunnels, do you have any clarity of when they're actually going to start the repairs? Because they talked about delaying it 2025 and beyond.
No, it's. I believe it's when East Side Access begins, which is hopefully 2023. It's
'Cause I-
been December 2022
'Cause I
or a
keep
little
seeing-
later for.
I
don't
keep
know.
seeing 2025.
So yesterday, Jana was also asked about the East River tunnels, and his reply was that they've been working very closely with Amtrak, and that they're making an effort to have a similar innovative approach to the East River tunnels because they're not nearly as badly damaged as the L train, as the Canarsie tunnels. So they're looking to have the same innovative approach to repair as opposed to reconstruction, to repair as they did for the L train tunnel. So he's hopeful that that's going to happen and cut a tremendous amount of time off and not require full closures, but to do the work on nights and weekends.
Of course, there's 4 of those, so if you did it the right way, you could still run a lot of service, but that's another issue. You have, of course, heard the R-179 fleet is back. I got to ride it the day after it was announced. They are back. They are functioning. This was a real lesson in car procurement. Lisa has suggested we go the RFP route, as we have done on other things, not necessarily the low bid. I've spoken to some others, and they agree that we can't have this situation again. As it turns out, if you read the financial blurbs that have been out lately, Bombardier is in some serious financial trouble. They have been trying to merge with Alstom. That doesn't appear to be happening. Alstom, of course, is building the successor to the Acela fleet, so they certainly have plenty of work to do. I don't know that they need Bombardier. I was talking to the new chief operating officer who is very familiar with Bombardier, and there's been trouble with them in Toronto and even in Montreal, their home city. So Bombardier definitely has some issues. Yes, but the cars are back and functioning, and you should see the 42's gone and the 32's are largely gone. There's still some running, but by spring those should be gone. And the 40, yes, please, go ahead.
Is Bombardier considered an American company?
No.
Or it's a
Canadian.
Canadian company, so.
They have an assembly plant
No,
here,
I
of
know,
course,
no,
yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that, but in
Qualify
terms
as
of-
Build New York, Build America because of the plant that they have here.
Because of the plant,
Yeah.
yeah, but in terms of the economic world, in terms of they're a
Canadian,
Canadian company,
yeah.
not an American. Oh, no, I know, that's why we built
However,
the.
they bring millions,
No, that's why
many
we had-
millions dollars of economic benefit to the state.
When they first got the first contract, one of the provisions was that they had to build
Yes,
that,
yes.
that upstate thing. And one more question, what exactly was the problem? There were so many different
It was
reports.
a problem with some doors opening about 3 or 4 inches midway, between stations. Not enough for a person to slip out, but very troubling nonetheless. Yeah, Bert?
The question I have is, are they going to retain any of those subway cars in the case they need to bring them back again, or are they going to scrap them?
Yeah, they're not scrapping all of the 32's. They might, put them in yards. They won't reef them if that's what you're thinking. Yeah.
Yards, right,
Yeah.
but not oceans.
So, as you also no doubt heard, Local 100 approved their contract, and the board okayed that. There was a board member who still has concerns that the fare hikes do not, and the budget does not account for the cost of the Local 100 contract. It's slightly above what we've allowed for, and if that were to continue every contract, every union, that could be problematic. So that view was certainly espoused by members of the board, and the chairman is very much aware of that situation. In fact, the chief financial officer, Bob Ferran, is talking about a little more pay-go being put into the capital program, which means a little more stress on the operating budget, which I've raised over and over, and which Lisa mentioned at her testimony yesterday. We cannot lurch from crisis to crisis on the operating budget. We need another source of funding for the operating budget so that we're ready to provide additional service when people convert after congestion pricing starts. If the ridership trend continues, you'll need it anyway, but you'll certainly need it once people have to pay 11 or whatever the charge will be finally that they determine will be for the central business district tolling.
We need it before congestion.
We do. We need it before. And speaking of which, the 6-person mobility panel has yet to be appointed, and time is moving along. Edith.
Quick question.
The ones that have just come back.
The what?
The ones that have come back.
Yes.
Okay,
You mean the 179s?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any sense of how they are for leveling the gap? Any idea? Has anyone noticed it? Just a question. I don't think I've ridden it, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I've heard that's not a problem. They're very good at that. They're good at something.
But,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
the platforms,
As
I
long
mean,
as
the
you don't
bottom
fall
line is
out,
the
they're fine.
platforms are like that.
Good question for Alex.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll ask Alex when he's here. He's certainly qualified to speak about that.
No, he's not, he doesn't use the subway.
Andrew?
Yeah.
To answer the question, there's some issues on the J line with them because there are some of the stations need to still be refixed. There's still some issues. Even at Flushing, there were some issues that were brought up to Alex a few months ago.
Flushing
but-
Avenue station?
Yes,
Okay.
Flushing Avenue,
Okay.
and because that's one station that's a major congestion area, but there are some issues when it's on those lines.
I noticed on the capital program that several stations on the JZ line are going to be made accessible and have other work done. So this is a perfect time to bring that up. Yeah.
When Andy comes in, the letter is here. and
Okay.
Mary's gonna read it to him.
One exciting possible addition to the rail scene might be the Triborough line. For those of you that are not aware, but I'm sure everybody in this room is aware because we're all sharp on this stuff, there is a freight line that runs from the Hellgate Bridge through Queens, near the cemeteries in East New York and Bushwick, down near Avenue I in Brooklyn, and all the way over to Bay Ridge. When it doesn't have mattresses down on the tracks, it is actually a rail line and a freight line. But there is serious talk, and the MTA is investigating the possibility of bringing service back on that line, which would be an amazing connection between the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. Don't know if we're talking heavy or light rail yet. It obviously only is one track in places, which would not work, would have to be expanded. Don't know if the right-of-way exists, but I think for the majority of the route it does, which would be an exciting addition, I think, and easily built compared to the BQX that Mayor de Blasio has mentioned many times, and going near a lot of population centers and would connect to so many different lines. And anyone who lives in Brooklyn and goes north-south certainly sees the open cut where this line is. You're aware of it, obviously.
Andrew, is that the one that AOC has been pushing? Because she's been talking about some unused rail line in Queens and the Bronx. I don't know what it is, but
No, I don't.
who is behind this one then? Because
Yeah, Regional Plan Association has been touting it.
Oh, not, because there are more elected officials who have more ideas about what we should do.
Stuart's pretty familiar with it. Let Stuart say a couple of things.
Hasn't seen passenger service since 1924, but it's actively used as a freight line. But the Long
it
Island
say
Railroad
that?
subsidiary operates the
ever
freight
after, okay.
line over that. So the question for Andrew, are they talking about operating it as a subway line or as a
That's
Long
what
Island
has
Railroad?
not yet been stated.
Yeah, because-
It wouldn't be a Long Island Railroad frequency.
Yeah.
It would be a light rail type frequency, I'm
Okay.
guessing.
Right, and the
'Cause
right-of-way is intact except for one spot. So
And where approximately is that spot?
where it meets the N line,
Oh,
they would have to rejigger something because they built a
Right.
station,
near 62nd Samad Street.
something.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
What about power?
It was electrified till the 1960s, and it doesn't have any power. It's all diesel.
So, I just want to say, so the RPA championed the study that's underway now, got in the capital program. So there's a lot that's been put out about there, people who like it, people who don't like it. Scott, at the hearing yesterday, there was a question about the North Shore study that's been going on. Well, and light rail. And what Jano said was that that it's progressing, and that if there's funding in the budget, that it will be moving to either open or completion during the next time of the next capital program. That's what the elected official from Staten Island said. So he's like, so another 6 years and another 6 years. Yeah.
But nobody seems to be talking about the obvious solution, which would be extending the Hudson Bergen light rail over the Bayonne Bridge along the North Shore to St. George. That would be so useful. That would give people an easy commute to all of the financial places in downtown Jersey City and Lower Manhattan and, anyway, don't get me started on that.
Just something on that, Andrew, just something on that.
Yes, Stuart.
So the right-of-way is not intact any longer. So after the stadium, till approximately the area past Sailor Snug Harbor, absolutely. They'd have to remove the debris that they dumped on the right-of-way. Yeah, but past Snug Harbor, the stations and right-of-way is intact. But from the stadium to Snug Harbor, they've put debris there.
Yes, Chris?
Also, one piece that Trudy is correct also is part of the track, let me focus on what I'm trying to say because I want to say it. Part of the track, Andrew, when we mentioned it is not far from the A train, when the A comes from the Far Rockaway, further up, there is some track that does meet the Long Island Railroad the old track. So there is a connection there because, as you said, it does.
Yes, there's many connections to that line.
Because there's a connection where it goes near, and Stuart is 100% right. It does go, because I pass it 100 times or 1,000,000 times anywhere because I live in Ocean Parkway, but it's
If
like.
you pass it 1,000,000 times, you're really not going anywhere else.
Very funny, thank you. But speaking of funny, but.
The man of the hour.
But as I was saying was, the concern, the thing is I think it might work, but all I'm saying is when you have the train connecting, it may be more like a Long Island Railroad connection because those
It's not determined yet what type of
I'm
vehicle.
just saying, I didn't say determined, I said possibly.
Yes.
But there is connections with the N train because then you can say, transfer is available to whatever you want to call
There's
it.
connections in
Yeah.
the Bushwick area. There's connections
But I'm talking
in
about
Woodside. I mean, there's
I'm
connections everywhere.
But what I'm talking about is more in Stuart and our end of Brooklyn.
Andy has a time deadline and is doing us a favor.
Have him say a few words too.
Yes. We want to read you a letter that we have, which is, Dear President Byford, the New York City Transit Riders Council would like to express our sincere appreciation for all you have done on behalf of the city's subway and bus passengers during your too short but illustrious career with the MTA. Over the past 2 years, you have truly listened and heard the riders, employees, and other stakeholders and made us all know that you care deeply about us all and in making the system better. You then implemented, with laser focus, the many practical and successful programs that renewed riders' hope in the system with your vision and solid results, but you always frame those results with the understanding we still have much more to do. Fast Forward is being realized through efforts like the Save Safe Seconds program, the bus network redesign, and prioritizing accessibility projects. All these initiatives and more are underway, helping riders get where they are going safely, efficiently, and reliably. We, the New York City Transit Riders Council, will continue to work to support your full vision now and in the years to come. Your inspirational leadership has put in motion the potential of our system's future, one that is accessible to all and meets the needs of this 21st century city and region. Thank you for creating that possibility and leaving the agency in a far better place than when you arrived. We wish you much success and happiness wherever your journeys take you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's so much. So all I can say is this is really a hard decision for me, right? Because I love this city, first of all. I really do. I really love New York, and I really love New York City Transit, the people that work there. You know, I call them my diamonds, and they are. But also the people that we do the job for, which is you and the people that you represent. So it certainly hasn't been an easy decision to make. It's one that's been a long time in the making and one that I didn't take lightly, but is comforted by the fact, to your point, Andrew, and the point of the letter, that I think we're in a good place. We've got a fabulous team. You look at people like Alex Ilagudin, like Sarah Meyer, like Sally Librera. We've really built a good team. And what I've tried to do is balance that team. I'm very proud of the fact it's a very diverse team, and it's all on merit. But it's real quality people in each of the areas, and I see no reason why they can't take that progress forward. In fact, I absolutely know that they will. So that's the one reason I'm comforted. The second is, and it's a team effort, and I always say that because it is a team effort. I suck up all the attention, but it's a team effort. We're in a much better place in terms of performance, particularly on the subway, but also on the buses, actually. It's all been about laying foundations, and on Access-a-Ride. It's been about laying foundations to focus back on the basics. There was a lot of stuff I thought when I got here that were kind of no-brainers, really, just obvious things that needed to be sorted. So we've really focused relentlessly on getting the basics right, putting group station managers in, save seconds on the buses, just even what I call small wins, but they're meaningful nonetheless. Downstairs, that used to be an embarrassment looking out the window at the Brooklyn tunnel entrance, and it was like a big bus jam. Andrew and I used to look out the window and see this big bus jam. And just by a bit of focus, we've sorted it out. And so the buses, in many ways, you have not seen the best of the bus network yet, right? Because a lot of what we've been doing is foundational, that a bit like building a big building, it takes its time before the foundations take a while, and you think this is taking forever. And suddenly it races up. And you'll see that happen with the buses, and certainly with the subways. And touch wood, if I can find any, this period, as long as we don't have a disaster in the next 2 days, I won't say anything else, watch for the number, right? The on-time performance number. As long as we don't have a disaster, please, 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 no disasters the last 2 days. And that's credit to my team. And then on the accessibility piece, it's probably what I'm most proud of. And I was in this room just last night with Chris and with Deborah and Anne, and we had the accessibility advisors group, and I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of the fact, and there's no journalists, and I think I can say what I want. Don't use it. Don't send this to YouTube. You can keep filming. We shamelessly, I admit it now, absolutely, we deliberately, shamelessly cornered the politicians. By saying on day one this thing's going to be fully accessible, and by partnering up with accessibility advisory groups and advocacy groups, there's no way that can be any regression on that now. That genie is not going back in the bottle. That is going to happen. It absolutely is. And then things like the re-signaling, I will say to I will stand corrected. CBTC is the way to go. It is not an 80s system. It's actually well advanced. It's no more an 80s system, because people say, it's a 1980s technology. No more than a Dreamliner is 1910s technology. Because you know what? The Wright brothers flew in a plane. They're both planes, but they look nothing like each other. It's no more than a Tesla's a Model T Ford. Things have come along a long way. But having said that, Pete Tomlin, who unfortunately is following me out the door, he has done so much to get the QBL back on target, but also a lot of what you'll see now come up in the future, things like ultra-wideband, they are the way of the future, but it's not a signaling system. It will enable us to do things more quickly. Fond memories, things that I'm proud of, is things like working with you, working with the Accessibility Council, but just sort of fun anecdotal memories and things I respect. The fact that no one can pick out detail like Andrew Albert. I want you on my quiz team. You should be... Andrew Albert should be on my quiz team because he's spectacular at noticing points of detail. And I love that about you because, like me, you obsess about detail. No one can make a timed speech at the board like Lisa Daglian. You've got it down to a fine art. The fact that you can, I've never once heard the beep go off. You get in just in time. It's spectacular. It's really very impressive. So, just lots of anecdotes. I mean, I'm proud to have known you all. I really am. It's I'm proud of the fact, Edith, I'd like to think that we had some mutual respect, right? Everyone said to me, oh, be careful of Edith Prentice. She's a nightmare. She's an absolute nightmare. But well, maybe they didn't quite put it like that, but it's impossible to please her. But but we understood each other, right? And Accessoride will get better. We had a meeting with Uber just now. It's going to turn the corner, and that's something else I'm very proud of. It's funny you should turn up. Rachel and Alex and the team, I'm really proud of. So happy memories, Mr. X. The one thing I'm disappointed about, I'm gutted about the fact you never came up for it with a nickname for me. Maybe I'm Andrea. I should be Andrea, right? Because there's Thomasina, Josephina. Maybe I'm Andrea. But again, I'm proud to know you. I remember bumping into you, sir, down somewhere in Brooklyn, down on like maybe Coney Island, somewhere. It was way down, right? There you go. And there you go. And you, sir, I also have respect for, because you really know the system. You really do. So it was, and I have to say, I'll let you into a little secret now. I used to watch the board meetings before I came to this job because, you know, I thought I might get a shot at New York City Transit. And I remember Mr. X coming up, and I'm like, I wonder what will happen when I finally get to meet him. And I'm proud to know you, sir. I am. And so I'm heading off to Staten Island now, actually. The job, I'm still here for another 2.5 weeks. I will keep fighting till the day I leave for the riders and for the people you represent, because it's actually, believe it or not, I've really enjoyed it. You know, it's been a blast. It's been my honor and privilege to serve New York City Transit, and I will keep working till the day I leave. And you never know, you may see me at a board meeting. The next speaker is Andy Byford. That would be fun. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Andy, one of the things that you mentioned, and which I mentioned before you got here, was that you were inspirational both to riders and the working group of men and women, and for your initiatives and your, you know, really terrific plans for transit to move forward. They won't have that inspiration, unfortunately, but hopefully somebody will carry it on. And yeah.
Can we take a picture with TRC?
The last thing on my report before we get to old and new business is we are cautiously moving forward with what will be our study of fare evasion. Sheila and Bradley are doing work on that and studying other systems and how they deal with the problem. And we will keep you posted on that, but it is something I really would like to do. I think it's a really important issue, and both Andy and others have said, oh, that would be great if you did a study as well. So we will keep you posted on that. It continues unabated, unfortunately. I can pretend I'm doing something else, looking at my phone or something, and watch as people stream in through the slam gate. And as Andy has said, we really should have a different fare entry system. Ours is no longer adequate for what we need to do. And the throughput is somewhat diminished with our current system as well. Although if anybody has tried the Omni turnstiles, they are so much better than when they first started that system. When they first started it, you had to be actually right in the center and perfectly up north and south, up and down for it to work. Now you can do it in a corner and it works. So it is really great. And Obviously, it won't be largely adopted until the weeklies and monthlies, all the unlimited types of rides are available on Omni, but that's coming. Every turnstile by the end of 2020 will have it, and every bus. So keep posted on that. I am done. Yes,
Ask a question on that.
Yvonne,
Is there going to be a special card for us?
absolutely.
Oh,
There will
so-
be every type of fare option that there is now, senior, disabled, weeklies, monthlies.
They're going to make a card?
They'll make a card, or it will be available in your phone.
Do we have further discussion about the order name?
Auto gates?
Yeah, do we have any further discussion
We
about
don't,
the order gate?
we don't yet. But I'm pursuing.
And how about?
Alex, let's talk to Alex.
Fine, and also the issue about, I mean, I have spoken with his people. I think that the bus configuration is really a disaster.
Yes, the placement of the Omni turnstile, card reader, you mean? I've noticed that too.
You've got, and the problem is mostly with the buses that have the jut out. There are different configurations of bars across the plexiglass door, and some are just terrible. You know, you come
You
in.
mean the operator of plexiglass door?
Right.
Yeah.
The issue is if you actually pay your fare, is when we have the problem. If you just scoot by and don't
There's
pay
no
your
problem.
fare, it's much less of a problem.
I think it's just a paper ride at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. X?
Okay, new business, downtown Q44
Do
bus.
an old first. Do you have any old?
Okay. Yes, I do. I gave you two paperwork about certain individuals who victimized me, MTA-wise. I gave you their names and photos. Okay, what's the story about them? Remember, I billed them as Godzilla, Andre Agassi.
And we are sharing it with the MTA. Okay.
Okay, that's all I want to, because I hadn't heard from you since then, and I just want
They
to
have it now.
Oh.
Deborah?
Okay, fine.
Okay, I'll wait even though I have You want, okay, I want to volunteer when you have to test for fare evasion, because you see, walkers and wheelchairs, we use the auto gates, and do you know how many people shove me and sneak in?
I can imagine.
And at first, I had a little trouble once or twice with Kings Highway, but then when the Transit District 34 officer, I went over to make sure he saw I have an AutoGate card. He realized, and then okay, I was left alone. But we also have other issues where fare evasion also we can't sometimes inadvertently help. Like yesterday, when we were coming here for the meeting last night, we went through the Stillwell Avenue entrance where there's an AutoGate. And this has been reported so many times in writing. We can't, I put the card in. It tells me when it expires, but the door's supposed to open. It didn't. This has been happening
At
for
which
more.
station?
This is the Stillwell Avenue, but it's not at the Mermaid entrance avenue, and that's not the problem because you see, there's an actual person sitting in the booth. So if they see there's a problem, they figure a button to open the door for me. Now I was with my son. Why? Because he swiped through, and I said, "Oh, just open this thing," because I was not going to walk around. They're doing too much construction, but happens at many other stations. But this station on the Stillwell Avenue keeps doing it over and over. It's never getting repaired. It says go, but it won't open.
It's just that bank of turnstiles?
It's not the turnstile. It's the auto.
The auto gate, just that one?
Just that one.
Is there a number of that? Have you recorded the number of that gate by any chance? Is there a number on it?
No,
No?
that's
It's just the Surf Avenue auto gate?
Yes,
Okay, we'll report that.
and and thank God if I didn't have him with me, I could have been in trouble. So
Just
Why
look
don't
at
you
the trouble you had having him with you.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But yes, I do volunteer so you could see what goes on. It would be horrifying.
Okay. Trudy?
On the fare evasion question, since Fair Fare went into effect on Monday, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
are there going to be any studies or any observations done to see if that helps fare evasion go down, or are they tying the two together?
They
And
will.
if
They will
not-
be. They will be looking at that. I think if somebody is taking the trouble to buy a fare Metro
Yeah.
card, that wasn't a person that was going to be beating the fare anyway.
Well,
but we will see.
May I suggest, if there isn't something in the works, that they do at the end of maybe a month or a quarter, to just see if there is any correlation.
There are observations of fare evasion all over the place now. If it has an effect, I think it will be obvious. But we will see.
Okay, well, since we all deal in a world of numbers, it would be helpful to just see.
It would be. Absolutely right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding old business also, regarding, I know I mentioned this months already, but it's really old last year. We need to also work on the future with safety, because I've been seeing a lot of these dancers hitting federal disability people, and I had to be and I'm going to say this, I was a witness to it, and I'm going to say in a different, because I've been keeping it down in a certain way, but it is getting kind of ridiculous that we're seeing this on the news. We're seeing a lot of people getting hurt, but seniors and disabled people. And to be honest with you, it's affecting a lot of trains.
Wait till the open gangway cars come.
It's not even the gang cars right now. I'm worried about right now. And
No, I know it's true.
It's really upsetting me
Actually,
because
they're pretty talented, and for them to do what they do, it's pretty. But
no, and I know Lisa's
I've
gonna.
yelled at them. I don't want them over my head. I don't
no,
want them
nobody
over my-
wants them.
But
No,
Lisa,
but they're not talented because it's
Some
just
of them
one lurch away from
Yeah.
a
That's
really
true.
serious
just-
injury
I'd
to
like
somebody.
this reported
And
also.
I just wanted to finish, if I may, just finish quick because I'm trying to go fast. This is really we got to do something, because it's bad enough I had to be a witness to a fellow disability person getting hurt, and it's really ridiculous to see that.
They're hurting regular people as
Yeah,
well.
and disability, and seniors.
Non-disability.
But
Andrew?
let me one person speak, because I'm getting.
Wrap it up, 'cause
I'm
we have a
trying to, but
heavy
everyone's
agenda.
stopping me.
Yeah.
New business. In the future, can we get an update with NYPD and MTA police? What are they doing regarding these incidents in the future? Because if we're going to do if we're going to do the fare invasion, I like to know where the NYPD are going to be stationed in certain areas, because I want to deal with the safety for every customer, because I don't see them that much.
That's a legitimate question. And
But I
when
did
Chief
say new
McGran was
business.
here, we should have
I
asked
said,
that
can we
question.
think about that in the near future?
I don't
talking
know
about.
how soon we can get the chief. We had him just pretty recently, but we can certainly.
I didn't ask for the chief. I'm just asking,
We can
can we do it
communicate.
something? Can we as TRC members do, like, if we're doing the fare invasion, can we also check when we do see where, also, since we're seeing the fare invasion, where the officers are put?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
That's
They've said that they're not going to tell us.
They're not telling us in advance, but when we're
I don't
out-
need
if
to tell
we're-
them in
if we're out
advance.
doing
We
observations,
want to
we will see it.
That's what I'm saying, Andrew,
Yes.
and you're saying what I'm saying. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Is this on his point?
On this point, and I think it makes it of what specifically we should be asking for, which is an incident report of where they're happening. The other day, I was on a Q train, and they were drunk doing that
Aye.
dancing, and clearly wobbling all over. And so I think
I've never seen
reports
that.
on the lines where it's happening, so that targeted efforts can be made, would be.
They didn't start
For the
off by
board.
saying it's showtime, did they?
It's serious.
Oh, okay. Mr. X?
Also, since you're still focused on old business AA, Burn Center Station, I constantly see fare evasion.
Which one?
Burn Center Station, I constantly see fare evasion. I constantly see hoodlums selling Metro cards so they can get their daily smack dose. So want to get high and wasted. So they get high and wasted. 3rd Avenue, 149th Street, downtown side, the fare machine, the machines are constantly inactive. They constantly only bills accepted. That's what I saw last 2 to 8 years. It's really ridiculous. And new business.
Your notes?
Okay. I'm going to do new business now because you have someone here. Okay. Downtown Q44 bus, first downtown stop on Boston Road at 180th Street. There are two machines, 10598 on my left, 10604 on my left. They were inactive in the last 2 to 4 weeks. On Boston Road at 180th Street, downtown Q44 bus, first downtown stop, machine number 10598 lies on my left, machine number 10604 lies on my right. I'm here to tell both of you two,
We'll report it.
the screens were black, meaning dead.
Yeah.
So I can't pay my fare before boarding the bus at stop. I have to pay my fare next time, which I don't feel like doing because that means I have to play musical chairs, musical buses. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not a fugitive
Right,
like Harrison
got it.
Ford.
We'll report those machines. Stuart.
So on old business, I had said it's not attributed to me in the minutes at the last meeting that we reestablish what Lisa's predecessor had done, which was keep track of the requests for old business so that we could have a checklist and move things along more quicker. On new business, but it's sort of related.
I just
Yeah.
want to, so we have that together, and
Okay.
just right before we came, I was going to print it out and bring it.
Okay.
And
So
we
next
had to,
time.
we had to, yes, it is, thank you. That's one of
Okay.
that's one of the things we can check off in the,
Right.
in the old business to-do list. But the next step is bringing it to the meeting and sharing it.
Sounds
So
good. Sounds good.
that will happen.
But on old new business, we had spoken about station cleaning and progress with that. These new wayfinding stripes, like at J Street Metrotech station.
Yeah, the accessibility
They're
lab.
starting to, the accessibility stripes, they're starting to be obscured with dirt or wear away. So someone visiting our system or even seasoned riders may just think it's a design and not know what it is. So like if they're trying to tell me to find the R line at a certain staircase and the R is obliterated, I don't know what the line means. So it's something I think we need to alert authority management about, that if they're not cleaning these things,
Yeah,
it goes back to my old business with station cleaning, not necessarily.
And people that are moving heavy things on a wheel, on a cart, have broken away some of those things too. So yes, I've seen it myself, Stuart. Alex, did you want to respond to that accessibility lab and how some of the pieces are being etched away?
I'm happy to respond if I'm asked. The stripes are a pilot, right?
That's what I thought.
And we're going to be trying some stripes at Grand Central soon, using some kind of different designs, a little bit wider, trying a couple different things. It's a difficult thing to pull off because when we've noticed when we power wash them too much, the actual ink and it just disappears. If we don't power wash them or wash them enough, then they do acquire dirt. I think the accessible boarding area sign at Fulton Center, so I only bring that up because it's all the same material actually. The stripes and the boarding area signs are the same materials. Some places are holding up better than others. We hope through this pilot and through some of the new things we'll try at Grand Central to come to a standard that maintenance folks and stations folks can all live with and does work. It is a tricky thing to pull off. I mean, look, if we have to change it every 5 years, that's acceptable. If we have to change it every 6 months or a year, that probably would not work. So it's kind of a TBD. We're aware of the feedback. There's some sealants and some other things that might protect it a little bit better, but again, several thousand 100 feet a day over it will do it to you. So we'll see.
This is old business, and also a question for Alex or an observation, which at the last meeting I brought up about the mess in Grand Central Terminal while all the work is going on. And of course, when you have that kind of work going on in a major, probably the most major, it's understandable. But the signage sucks. I can think of no other way to
Tell
do
us
it.
how you really feel, Trudy.
Yeah. It really sucks. Okay, anyway. But the thing is that about 2 weeks ago, I don't know for what reason, probably not from what I said, or it seemed to be cleared up a little bit, especially with the main escalator going up to 42nd Street out, and the elevator, and then the elevator out, but there was another elevator that the signage, and it seemed to be okay. Yesterday, I was meeting a friend for lunch at Pershing Square, which is right across the way. She is from Los Angeles. She is the one who's used the word, she used a stronger word than sucks, because she was late because she couldn't find her way out of Grand Central Terminal, literally. So I would ask again, and I had brought this up, the last thing, to do something while the work is going on. Maybe appoint some people who are just responsible for every time an entrance is closed or a staircase is moved or whatever.
You're talking about the terminal itself, not the subway, right?
No, I'm talking about both. I'm talking about to get to the subway,
When
you
get
have
out
to
of the
go
subway,
from the.
like at the mezzanine level.
The
before you
mezzanine
go.
level is where the disaster
Yeah.
really is.
I agree.
So can we make a request or something, because this construction is going, or renovation is going to be going on for quite some time. Yes, it's the mezzanine level that is the worst, but downstairs also at the subway level, it doesn't point to you where you can go to get to the mess upstairs even.
So we did actually ask, Andrew asked out of Jano at the board meeting last week, month, week. Wow.
Yeah, it's
What a
been quite
difference a week makes.
Yep.
And Jano said that there would be new signage that's going up, but we'll keep on
No,
top of
I'm
that.
telling you, if he asked Jano a week ago, I am telling you about the experience of yesterday, and it was really a disaster, and especially for people with disabilities, knowing where the elevator is or how to get from one level to another, or and especially for people not necessarily who don't need an elevator but do need an escalator
We'll follow
to
through,
go
Trudy.
up. So Alex, I don't know if you can do something about
Yeah,
this
no,
also.
we've been working on this. I mean, we did release some new signage a few weeks ago. Again, it's tricky because they move from one side to the other, and then it's one part not. But I mean, Rachel, is there something? Rachel has. Yeah, she was working directly on this. There was. We're coming up with a plan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Cohen. I'm in the System-Wide Accessibility Office with Alex. So I guess first to say, that's really what the intention of this floor-based wayfinding tape is, to point people specifically to the escalators and the elevators that are in service, and not to replace, wall signage, but as a supplement to wall signage. I think the changes you saw, about 2 weeks ago were probably around the big press conference, the rebranding as the 42nd Street Connection project. But a big push within that project is to improve signage, to improve customer information. Go ahead.
About temporary signage.
Understood.
I am talking about that one exit is closed one day and another staircase is closed, that there should be someone or some ones who are just responsible every day for checking the signage and making sure that it adheres to what is going on that day. I
Understood.
am not talking about permanent signage or wayfinding or anything like
Okay,
that.
right. And what we're talking about is not permanent either,
like
but
a
it's not a
project,
daily
whoever
update.
the project manager
Right,
is.
and that's, a combination of the project manager and probably the group station manager who's there every day. So I think that's probably the best person for us to take that feedback to in terms of daily checks. You're right, that is beyond what we've discussed, but I think it's a GSM.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead. Microphone.
Because they're posting elevator outages on the web, the assumption is no one has to do anything on the doors. And unless they have a lot of fun and do all the tapes, there's a great thing you all have to see. On the A platform, there's a new tombstone sort of thing, and it's all wrapped up right now. It's
What
not
station?
working yet. Downstairs.
Oh,
It's great. I have pictures. But, seems to be that there's no longer any attention to signage on the elevator. Once the service people get there, they may put up that yellow one. But otherwise, you have and of course, we know how well they answer the bell. I mean, I'm more likely to go to the blue light if there's one right there. But there's a total lack of doing anything to notify people on the platform that an elevator is out.
I will speak to Sally about that. Sally would be the person. I will make a point of that. Thank you.
I mean, the other day, 2 out of the 3 elevators were down on Fulton, and they were not. I mean, they had just gone down. So you had no way of knowing where, what. I mean, I usually say, look for does at least a little light on the button light up, but many of them still and haven't done for
Okay,
years.
thank you. I want to get to our speaker because he has a very, very interesting presentation to make, something we've been asking for a long time. But I also want to give Alex a congratulatory card.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations on your...
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that.
Um,
I will share this with her.
Oh, terrific. Alex is the first ever New York City Transit Senior Advisor for System-Wide Accessibility. One of the great things that Andy has done. In 2003, when he was in college, a deer-related car accident led to a spinal cord injury, and today he uses a wheelchair, obviously. He co-founded Wheeling Forward, a nonprofit organization with a mission to help people with disabilities to integrate into the community by learning to overcome barriers. In 2015, he became the Accessibility Program Manager of New York City's Taxi and Limousine Commission. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to because we all know Alex and how fabulous he is and what a great job he's doing. He lives in South Brooklyn and commutes via express bus and Access-A-Ride. So welcome again, Alex, and we're very excited to see the next group of stations and how this is all coming about.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great intro. You guys asked for a presentation on the capital plan. I think the big picture stuff is obviously the ADA stations, and most of this presentation is based on that. But I'm happy to talk about some of the other capital items, elevator replacements, and some other accessibility features that are also, quote unquote, capital. So we can talk about that towards the end. But this presentation is going to take you kind of through how we selected the stations, how we intend to deliver them, and kind of what it all means. I'm gonna leave it to you guys as to whether you want to allow questions during, middle, or after. But I will just keep going. It's about 15 slides. It'll take probably about half an hour, give or take, and depends. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So, getting started. This is our current situation. Rachel, do we have that other map or no? Okay, yeah. We do have a map of the current and the future a little bit, but this is the current situation, 124 accessible stations. 9 are partially accessible. They do serve 44% of our ridership by entrance and exit. There's about 20 stations that are currently in design or construction. These are stations that are part of the 2015-19 plan, so not the 2024 plan, but this is the list of stations that are upcoming. We're hoping that 10 will open probably this year in 2020, if we can hit that target, and the remaining 10 or so stations probably in the next 2 or 3 years. There are some behemoth stations in here that are still a few years out. So getting to the capital program and the 70 stations, we're going to talk a little bit about how we selected the 70 stations. Obviously, we had our overarching fast-forward goal, which was to make sure that no customer is more than 2 stops away from an accessible station. So that was the primary goal of how we got to the 70. We needed about 40 or so stations to achieve our no more than 2 away goal. Fortunately, we had 30 additional stations to work with that allowed us to go well beyond no more than 2 away. In many, many instances, we ended up no more than 1 away. But it also allowed us to go after terminal stations, big complexes, and other kinds of things. And we'll talk about that when we get to the stations themselves. We announced the first 48 stations in September. We'll talk about that in a few. Then we announced 20 stations within the last month. Additional criteria that we used, obviously transfer points, connections to terminals, proximity to activity centers, high ridership, and just demographics in general, meaning based on census data where seniors are living or where other kinds of anything that we can find. And we'll show you that in a second. Community input was one of the major decision points. We had a meeting in February where we asked the community which stations they'd like to see. We spoke to disability organizations, advocates at various points throughout the year and asked them what stations they would like to see, and that weighed very heavily in our decision making process. So this is an example of what we would call a coverage group. Coverage group means we need one of these stations in order to achieve our no more than 2 away goal. So for example, if you're looking there in South Brooklyn, if you're looking on the F stretch there, we had 2 separate coverage groups, right? We needed to select one of 3 or one of 4 stations within those groups in order for that stretch to be no more than 2 away. So technically, in that batch, when we met with the community, we obviously had a strong push for Kings Highway, and that was the station selected in that purple group. And similarly, we had a very close call between Avenue I and 18th Avenue on that stretch. But when we met with the community, we had a discussion. We presented also data like this, which said, what were the intermodal connections, what was the ridership rank, what were other things, and we collected comment cards, we collected comments, we collected various data, we took that back in, and that's how we landed on the stations. Again, this is the public event that happened on February 6th. We had a very lively event. We had a lot of views. We had a lot of feedback. We think it went very well. And I just want to highlight, this is really an exciting historical time. As you know, the 100 key station plan was mandated by the legislature, and at that time, 30 years ago, those stations were set in stone, the 100 key stations. So the community probably had some input in time, but it's been 30 years plus since we were able to select stations. This was, really allowed us to see what were the community priorities, what is needed most right now, and things like that, and really presents a completely different mode, a mode that I think is great, which is the community determining where to spend the money, where it brings the most value, because obviously we've got several 100 more stations to go, and the resources that we have allocated should be going to the stations that will bring the most value and have the most priority. So evaluation also took into account cost and complexity. There were certainly points and times with various stations where if doing a station is going to be exorbitantly expensive to the tune where, hey, this might be a $250 million station, but it's a local station on, so-and-so line. Does that really make sense? If we choose another station and we get 3 stations for the same value, maybe that's something that makes sense from a value perspective as we prioritize stations. Some stations, there's probably 10% of stations that have such levels of complexity from an engineering perspective, it remains to be seen if they'll ever be made accessible. Things like narrow platform stations that are incredibly deep. Those are things that, we will let's get 300, let's get to 400, let's get to 450, and then we can talk about the super challenging ones. But it's certainly something that played into our decision-making process. If we could avoid those with ones that we can deliver faster and more efficient, then why not do so? Also, things like real estate acquisition, some stations do present incredibly difficult real estate acquisition challenges. We tried to stay away from those as much as we could. Even in the 70 that we selected, there's probably 7 or 8 that are going to have real estate property acquisition, which, look, it's a thing. It's going to take 2 years to negotiate with whoever owns that property, maybe court processes if they hold out. It's something that we as an agency do, and I don't want to say we're happy to do it, but we'll do it in order to achieve accessibility. But it is something that slows projects down. So when we can avoid it, we absolutely try to do so. So this is the list of selected stations. This is the first 48 that were announced. Many of you are probably familiar with the list. You'll see different versions of the list and different counts in the next few slides, but this is a representation of that. Then the next 20 stations that were announced last month in December, that really helped us fill in some of the outer borough stations, and Harlem 148th, which is an important terminal that we really needed to get done. The last big complex in the system, Lexington Avenue, 59th Street, which is also on this list. So it was obviously great to have 70 stations to work with, and in terms of making our selections. So this is kind of just a showing of what accessibility looks like by borough today, what it'll look like in a year or two, and then what it'll look like in 5 years. So for example, if you take Brooklyn, Brooklyn has 170 total stations, which is more than any other borough. As a percentage today, Brooklyn is only 18%. After completion of the current project, I believe there's about 6 stations or so that are in 5 or 6 stations that are in construction or designed currently as part of the current program. You will have 38 stations accessible in Brooklyn, and that'll be 22%. Then obviously Brooklyn, because Brooklyn does have the most stations. Brooklyn has about 23 or 24 of the 70 stations are allocated in Brooklyn. So once that is complete, Brooklyn will have 61 total stations at 36%. And I want to highlight this a little bit. There was not a lot, but there was some initial pushback when the original 48 list came out that Brooklyn was the most represented borough. And the truth is, when you set a goal of no more than 2 away, that is a system-wide coverage kind of proportionate goal. So Brooklyn having the most stations overall would lead you to believe that it will also have the most stations when you select no more than 2 away, and that's how it worked out. But ultimately, if you look at that last column, Queens and the Bronx as a percentage of stations, not as a volume count by station, will have a greater percentage of their overall stations accessible by the time we finish the current stations and the next 70. So, but I think this does really show you a very great distribution of how we selected the stations, where investments are going. I mean, granted, Manhattan has the most stations. I mean, that's just the nature of the world. We live in a Manhattan-centric place, and the key station plan, which was the 100 stations, was heavily predominantly in Manhattan, and we didn't get to select those. So Manhattan continues to lead the way, but that's a little bit of the nature of how it goes. But otherwise, the outer boroughs, I think, are getting really fair and equal treatment as we move forward. So let's talk a little bit about project delivery, some of the new things we're going to be doing with these stations, talk a little bit about the timeline and things like that. So this you already know, $50 billion, $5 billion for station accessibility has been allocated. I think you know, we traditionally have operated our ADE projects in a design, bid, build capacity, which means we would spend, you know, potentially a year or two designing the project, then bidding it out. But the MTA in general is going to a design, build approach, which allows us to very quickly get projects out, which means that the same contractor who is going to be doing the design is going to be doing the construction. We really believe this is going to help to deliver projects faster and with more accountability. A lot of times when you do the design separate, by the time it gets to the contractor, it has its own challenges, or the contractor, you know, digs the earth up and finds out all kinds of new things. So the design build contractors will be more empowered to control the design, to control the construction, and really do as they see fit, but obviously within the parameters and requirements that the MTA sets forward. So design build contracts are something that we believe is a strategic improvement in delivering projects. Bundling stations, this is something we also believe will be really helpful. We've generally done ADE projects one at a time, one procurement at a time. You know, if we start doing 5 or 6 stations together, we believe we'll gain efficiencies. We believe we will also have more contractor engagement. Contractors like more projects, more bigger projects. And hopefully we can also, as opposed to doing one project at a time, by doing many projects together, really come up with the standard lessons learned and more standardization for these stations. Although we've done, you know, 120 to date, and we have a very much varied system, we believe there's more standardization that we can come up with, and that's something that we'll be doing very strongly in the next year or two, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Creative design solutions and efficiencies. You know, this is really about thinking about new ways to do elevators, modular elevators, which we're going to be leaning on our contractors to try, street to platform design, right? We're talking to the FTA about, in some stations, going right from the street to the platform, and seeing how that helps us more efficiently get folks up to the platforms and save some money. And save aggravation. Aggravation is the key. Saving aggravation is key. Working with our city partners, this is really a big deal. This is something that, as somebody who works here every day, working with DOT to site elevators, working with DOT to get bump outs, are things that have been tricky at times on ADA projects. Not that DOT is not supportive. I would never say that, but it's a process, and it includes. Sometimes can slow projects down. Similarly with utilities, right? We have to move, you know, massive amounts of utilities at times, and sewers and water mains and all kinds of other things. If the city becomes, let me just say, a greater partner on these projects, having those kinds of things be moved out of our way and be done quicker will help us deliver this, because it's, you know, they're not internal to us, and we're the state and they're the city, and it continues to be a challenge at times. But we believe we've had some really good conversations with our city partners about having working groups and regular meetings and all kinds of things that will help us move these along. And also, this slows our contractors down and adds price. If a contractor is waiting with a team for a bump out to be approved for 4 months, I mean, that's time that costs money, and that delay that costs us money. And an aggressive procurement schedule, and I'll talk about that a little bit on our next slide. So we are really trying to hit the ground running. Specifically, all the stations are now being managed by Jano's team, the MTA Construction and Development, Capital Construction Development. So they really want to hit the ground running. They want to make the contractor community really excited about this work. Not to think that we're going to, send out one station every 4 months and, we'll get 70 done in a decade. So we've already sent out the RFQ for the first 23 stations. So this is our kind of opening salvo to the contracting industry to say, hey, we are going to get these out quickly. You need to be ready to do the work, and we want to get them done. So this is a list of the first 23 stations that are going out for construction. which in theory also suggests that these are the first 23 stations that will be completed of the 70, but depending on phasing and scheduling and how utilities and streets and things work, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be the first ones done. But in theory, the majority of these will be the first ones to get done. So that kind of does it for the stations. I will just say, you know, we also have 65 elevator and 78 escalator replacements as part of this capital plan. We have about $25 million allocated to wide fare gates, to testing out wide fare gates. You know, the wide fare gate project is capital in nature, so it's also a capital item. But we really are leaning a lot on Cubic, who is the manufacturer of the gates, to deliver a good gate to us, which it's not one of those things that, you know, we really, all right, just give us what you used in some other city. You know, we have unique needs for accessibility, for fare evasion, for other kinds of things. So at least in the next 2 years or so, we're still going to be in a pilot phase with wide fare gates, and that's what those funds represent. Hopefully, if we find a really good product, we believe there is enough money in this capital plan to, you know, we probably need something to the tune of $100 million to significantly implement wide fare gates, at least in accessible stations, and eventually to go system-wide would require several $100 million. But at the same time, we know that moving away from AFAS gates to wide fare gates is the direction that we want to go in, and that is also something that funding has been allocated for. Sure.
Would the move to the wide fare gates be in conjunction with converting a station to Omni? Does that make sense, or
no?
that's
Omni will
much earlier. Obviously.
Omni will be done much sooner.
Yeah.
Because Omni is a payment collection system. A wide fare gate is more of a physical removing of gates and putting in something that people can go through. And yeah, Edith, you have questions, right? Yeah.
Would the wide fare gate hopefully eliminate the need for auto gates?
Yes, they will replace auto gates. Auto gates will be a thing of the past, hopefully, in 5 years, but can't promise that.
Can
It's
I-
going to depend how quickly Cubic can produce them.
Given all the press we saw over the last 2 days with the mayor, etc., I think that some of us are very concerned about now suddenly hearing that, you know, these are the numbers we've been seeing for a while. Now suddenly it's, well, if the city doesn't kick in what the MTA considers to be their share, how is this going to impact Big Gray Cloud? These numbers we're talking about for accessible stations.
As far as I can say, and as far as I know, the MTA remains committed to these stations. We internally and to the world have absolutely no intention of walking back on these. Yes, the advocates commonly ask what happens if, you know, money gets reduced or there's no money or something happens with the economy. I think for us, the right thing to do is say we're moving forward. We got 23 out. We hope to get probably another 25 to 30 out in the next year, sometime in 2021. The faster that we can get those funds committed, and those are the first things that are being committed as ADA projects. Once the projects are out and committed in contractors' hands, those funds are immovable, quote unquote. So, you know, I can't answer you the question of what happens, but I don't believe that even if the city doesn't live up to what's requested of them, that we would walk back on anything. And certainly those of us who work here would advocate for no such thing.
That was raised yesterday at the hearing in Albany too, and the chairman was pretty committed to saying that, you know, that this is a bigger plan, that it's going to happen. So, you know, TBD. Maintenance for the elevators, the new elevators, the old elevators. I mean, maintenance has obviously been an issue, and with the standardization, hopefully that will reduce some of the breakdowns and issues that have been had, but are there maintenance contracts included with some of the design build? DBOM kind of?
So let me give a couple responses. I think that standardization, excuse me, standardization of elevators and those kinds of things are probably the second most effective thing we can do to affect maintenance. I actually think that the number one most effective thing we can do is replace elevators. So these 65 elevator replacements are replacing some of the oldest elevators in the systems, some of the worst performing elevators in the systems. And, you know, just like if you have a 30-year-old car, or these days maybe even a 10-year-old car, there's only so much you can do to constantly maintain that thing. So I think that the elevator replacements are going to be incredibly helpful. This is way more elevator replacements than we have done in the past. I think standardization will help a lot in terms of having similar type elevators for our teams to maintain. And I think the latter part of your question, which was about having some outside maintenance or DBOM type of contracts, it's something that has been in discussions with the union and other partners. It's something that we are considering trying. It's something that would really require a little bit of testing. If you look at other cities, some cities have had good success with outside maintenance, and some cities have had not such good success. I think for us to do so, I would recommend that we do so slowly, maybe a certain section of the city where we try that, and see how it goes. But yes, something's got to give. If we can't hire more maintainers, but we have 200 new elevators in the system in 5 years, that's not going to work out very well. And if we can't hire new maintainers internally, then we need to find an external way. But one way or another, there's 200 to 300 new elevators that are coming down the pipe, and we've got to figure out how to maintain those new ones as well as maintain old ones. So it's a topic on everyone's mind.
Alex, so I want to continue with elevators and escalator replacements and have you get a little more granular. So are all of the scopes of these items the same? And if not, what's the phasing on these projects with relation to the new installations of elevators at stations along a particular line? Have we looked at the impact of these items versus the new installations and how it might affect particular communities along the line?
Sure. So the first part of your question is with regard to the scope or how we're doing these. These replacements will be going out design build as well, which is going to be a pretty significant change in terms of going design bid build. When we went design bid build, we would generally very stringently dictate which elevators and escalators would be used by the contractors who are doing the work. Now that we're going design build, we will certainly continue to put out requirements and things like that, but the design build contractors will have some more discretion as to which elevators they use. We are currently in discussions as to how prescriptive we want to be. We do want a standardization. We want more standard products used. But if you look at our system and you look at a standard elevator product and you look at certain stations with the space constraints and other things, you quickly see that a standard product isn't always going to work. But I think the upshot to the answer to your question is the design build contractors as well as the major manufacturers in the world of elevators are going to be having more say into what kind of elevators are put into our system, which, depending how that works out, could be a really good thing because they know it best and they install, thousands of elevators a year. The second part of your question was how this work is going to get done. We absolutely will be looking at how these replacements impact certain lines, certain communities and things like that. Are we going to get it 100% right where, hey, we're putting out an elevator at the same time as we open up the next station or something? I don't know that it's going to work like that. The time frames for elevator replacements, could be anywhere from a year to a year and a half. The time frames for a new accessible station are anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending on the complexity. It's something we'll look at. We will do our best to provide reasonable answers as to what we chose to do. We'll certainly look to avoid the most egregious situations where we might be, taking out elevators for a whole community. I think the South Bronx is going to be an interesting area. There's about 3 or 4 stations in the South Bronx that are identified in the 70, right? You have 167th on the B&D, you have 138th, you've got a couple stations. 149th Street has a couple stations in construction and a couple along the Pelham line. But at the same time, some of the oldest elevators in the system are at the existing Bronx stations. So how do you couple the new work, yet still having to replace certain elevators that are going to take those existing stations out is going to be a challenge for us. I think
Good luck.
Exactly. I think the exciting part is the South Bronx will be incredibly accessible in 5 years with new elevators as well as new stations. But in the meantime, those folks may have to bear some of the pain.
So I just want to conclude that by saying, as you do, continue to work with the disability advocates to schedule these things if they have strong preferences over particular areas. The other thing is for Lisa and for Andrew, I said at the last meeting, though it had nothing to do with you, when this was unveiled with the new lineup of what's to be done, I'd like to see the data displayed by line and by borough. So if I can make that request directly to you.
Sure. We'll send it over to
I'd like
Lisa
to
and
see
she
it
can share
that way.
Which data? You mean which stations?
Which stations are
Okay.
getting new No, I want to see it by line.
By line, yes. Okay, yeah.
And because I asked for this, it's memorialized in the minutes we signed off on. I don't have an answer, and
Got it. Yeah. We'll,
Yeah,
we'll,
but I'd
we'll,
like to
we'll
see
find
it
a way
that
to get
way.
it to you, sure. No problem. Yes. There's a couple hands in the back too, Andrew.
Some of us who are of a certain age, senior citizens, it's called, find it
I've heard of
difficult. Yeah. Yeah. I'm living it now. But used to be able to scamper upstairs or, walk easily. And now don't need elevators, but do need the escalators. And what I'm talking about is not installation of new escalators. I'm talking about something that should be simple, or maybe it's simplistic, about maintenance. And especially in stations where there is an up and a down escalator, and the down and the up escalator goes out while the down escalator is still working, to just have someone, when you report it to someone at the station, to just flip a switch so that the down escalator, which it's easier to walk downstairs than it is to walk upstairs, becomes an up escalator. I mean, I can't tell you how many times this has happened. And I've gone to what I used to call the token booths. I don't know what you call them, when there are people there, or there's a station person. And usually what I get is, not my job. I don't have anything to do with that. And it is so frustrating. And it is so annoying. This morning, now here there is only one escalator, and this was even better. I come out of the Bowling Green station to get here, and there's one escalator leaving. Well, there are a lot of, but the one leading to Broadway, there is just an up escalator. It seems to be running, but the maintenance people or the stations people are putting those yellow, those things that out of order things. But it's running. So I go over nicely, because for once I was kind of early, and I say, "Excuse me, what's wrong? The escalator seems to be running." And the guy says, "I don't know, lady, they told us to shut it down." I said, "But it's still running, so how about that?" He says, "Nope, our orders were to shut it down. It doesn't matter that it's running. Doesn't seem to be anything wrong, but we're waiting to see." Now that is so frustrating for the average rider, and especially for people like me of a slightly advanced age.
Sure. So you asked a couple different questions in there. I will say that the process of changing an escalator to up or down, the view that like, you know, we do it in that sense is a little simplistic. The truth is, our operations planning team determines for the most part when escalators run up or down, and that has to do with station capacity and station ridership. Yeah.
I am talking about just in a situation where for some reason one stops working, in an immediate situation, not which goes up, which goes down, but just when you have two functioning escalators and one goes out of order. There should be an automatic, or the stations people should be told that always keep the us up escalator running. If you have to change the down to an up while repair work is being done.
I hear
That's
you.
what
I'm
talking
not an
about.
expert in it, but my understanding is, no, the flipping of the switch is simple. But our operations teams, who specifically study patterns of traffic in a station, may say that that escalator must always run down at the 4 o'clock hour, because that's when we know 10,000 people are about to come through an exit, and we cannot run that escalator in the up direction in order to have proper station exit capacity. So they study the patterns of where people are moving, which the primary purpose of escalators is to move people along. Accessibility as accessibility features, I'm just being candid, is the secondary function of what of what escalators do. Getting people out of the station and making sure that there isn't dangerous jams or crowds is the number one guiding force of whether escalators run up or down. So I'm
So
just
that
telling
if
you.
a senior citizen has a heart attack because they have to walk up, or because they're slowing up the traffic because they walk a lot slower, and they have to walk up, there's no consideration. I mean, that is accessibility, to my way of thinking, as much as somebody who has a disability.
There is a consideration, and it's something we look at. And I've been on, 24 emails over the last year where we've gone through decisions about, hey, this escalator is going to be out for a while. What do we do? How do we do it? We always consider that. I always make a pitch. But if our operations team says this may lead to 1,000 people running into each other as they're trying to exit at the top of that escalator, which creates a massive safety issue, then that will carry the day. It's a consideration. We've done it on the 2nd Avenue subway in certain places. We've done it in other places where we've been asked, hey, run this up. It helps people. People prefer it. I'm just telling you all the various factors that go into that decision.
We got to move on, but we will actually speak to stations about this issue.
And can I add one point of context about why we don't make those switches so easily? In addition to the operations planning concerns, yes, flipping the switch itself is simple, but because our escalators, they run all the time, they always run in one direction. There's actually a concern that if you flip that switch, it might damage the escalator, which puts it out of service for everybody. That's not true across the board, but we are in the middle of surveying all our machines to see currently in time which escalators can and cannot be sort of safely immediately switched, so that we can give that information to station personnel, so that if it's, if it can be done safely, it's something that we can consider. But, the flipping switch itself is simple, as you said, but it does have, potential consequences for the machine that could, if it takes it out of service for everybody for a week, that's
no good.
An unintended consequence we need to avoid.
Mr. X, then okay.
Regarding these escalators, elevators, and ramps, between the particular escalators and elevators, when they malfunction, okay, the powers that be need to get off their asses and fix them immediately, not whenever the hell they get around to it. So then it goes with the machines. Okay, Roosevelt Station, elevator 421, serves the downtown E train. Inactive last Saturday. I saw a sign posted to be inactive till 1:20, 3 o'clock. Didn't say AM or PM. When I checked the website, I saw something else. I don't find that amusing. And something else I didn't find amusing. What happened downstairs on January 15th, in which which only one board member was present, the remaining were absent, and also someone else who should have been there was also absent? I don't find that amusing either. Only thing good about that event was it was on the Stone Street side, so I had to break my neck getting upstairs. Plus, there's an X-ray machine on that side. There's none on the Broadway Avenue side. No, the powers that be need to fix the elevators, escalators, and ramps, particularly elevators, escalators, meaning. And they need to stop. Certain individuals need to stop boarding the elevators and escalators with these carts, hand trucks, rollerblades, bicycles, skates. Either ride the damn bicycle or leave it home. It's that simple. Okay? I'm getting tired of these people bulldozing me with their damn bicycles. They just ran right into me, just make me feel like Abner Weeman. I don't find that amusing. And then if I complain, then they say, let's step outside. I don't play that. Because all I have to do is pick up one of these, open there, just do what Harvey Keitel did in Alice's Live anymore. Don't mess with a scorpion.
So first of all, Good Neighbors of Park Slope would like to thank you very much for its 7th Avenue stop being in the next 23 to be done.
First one to go.
On a practical basis, I just wanted to ask you, how do we keep track of, is there going to be a study done first as to where the elevators will be? Do we lose the pizza store on the corner? You know, I just want to know how we keep on top of what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is a very, very, very good question. There are several versions of studies that are done. The first are very high level, which means that we have places where we believe the elevators may go, but we go in and we see what's underneath. What's the soil like? What's the ground like? Are there what is? We believe there are utilities there, but hey, are we right? There's a lot of times we open up, there's other utilities. So that's kind of the highest level where we kind of study options and what's the constructability. Then we move on to, we study internal proposals as to where that elevator can go. It is not the case that the elevator can go anywhere because it has to match with the mezzanine, right? We're not going to, build out a new mezzanine. In terms of our community input or community outreach to, hey, this is where we're thinking of putting an elevator. That is something that is going to be new for us, and we intend to try to find a way to get that information before the community and kind of have them at least have an understanding of our decision or get their input on it. And that's something that my team will probably be leading in terms of how we do that. That is no easy task because traditionally we've generally coordinated with other city agencies, and to make sure that like DOT approves the sidewalk and whatever. Talking to the community for major projects like 14th Street or others we do. For all local stations we don't always do. But I will take your request that the community have a way to know where the elevator will go as something for us to take seriously. And I want to, even if we cannot accommodate the community's request, we should be able to take their factors, considerations, and have a discussion.
Yeah, and we're happy to help in that regard, getting that word out. Let me ask a quick question before I call on Edith and Chris. I was at a community meeting that was held in Brooklyn Heights where Andy and lots of elected officials were talking about the Clark Street elevators. Has a decision been made on those yet? Whether there will be one at a time or two at a time or all three will be out at a time? And
Rachel, do you know that? There was a recent.
no decision
I believe
yet.
that
Okay.
this was in Andy's hands, but as of recently has been transferred to Jano.
Okay.
And Jano's team is reevaluating. I think a bypass is closer to a reality than it was previously.
Yeah, it's not exactly a transit desert, Brooklyn Heights.
Yes.
It's 2 blocks to other station or less. But the other thing was Andy and I had discussed when we were talking about the stations on Central Park West, which I noticed 81st and 96th are candidates for accessibility, which makes sense. They have wide sidewalks. But there was talk at one point of a smaller sized elevator that might fit in places that otherwise could not take the standard elevator. Are you still looking at those?
We did some studying, and specifically as part of the Washington Heights stations. I mean, the more that we get reports from our engineers as well as outside consultants, I don't think that we're moving in that direction.
So if it doesn't take the standard size elevator, it's not a candidate for accessibility.
Yeah, it's not only about standard size, right? The ADA dictates the size of the elevators that we must have. It's also the possibility of using like commercial grade lifts, right? Based on what we've seen with feasibility, based on how much size they take anyway. Because look, if we can fit an elevator, we'll do an elevator. But hey, you want to go smaller because there's some kind of, ground or soil or engineering challenge.
Or the station geography.
Yeah, the
doesn't allow
station
for it.
geography. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Station geography. Then not only does that mean smaller size, it means lower duty, right? Lower duty type machine, right? They don't make specifically smaller, heavy duty type elevators.
It would be good for people with walkers and or canes, but not accommodate a whole wheelchair, is what I guess was the idea with the smaller, which is not accommodating
which is
everybody,
not an
obviously.
accessibility improvement per se.
Right.
So we did look at it. There is one place where we may still consider piloting it in Washington Heights, and that's a discussion we're having internally.
With Edith.
Well, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here today, Edith. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And you, Edith, you may be getting a ramp at 190th as well. Only northbound, yes. Yes.
My question actually was sort of like that because Dykeman was promoted at the time as a new model, just like Hudson Yards was a new model. Have we learned anything from those two elevators and other such elevators that were new models that are assisting you in this rollout?
I will say this in the most candid fashion. I think like the Hudson Yards elevators we're not madly in love with. You know, they look cool. They are functional, but they do present certain. There are maintenance challenges and then there are reliability challenges, and those aren't always the same thing. Maintenance is how hard it is for us to maintain. Reliability is how often it's available for the community. I think those projects represented custom type elevators, which would be the opposite of what we're trying to do.
And the Dykeman
Based on,
elevator?
I don't know about the specific Dykeman one. I can ask for you.
It was promoted at the time
How long ago was that?
when it opened.
Mm-hmm. And was that built by a developer, I believe?
No.
That was us?
No, yeah. The developer issue, the building never got.
Okay.
It's into a hillside. But the
Let me find out from you. I'll ask our
the problem
elevator
there
team.
was also we're very interested in knowing whether it's only going to be a ramp because it is under 2 feet from the parking lot to the uptown platform. Seriously, it is.
Right. I think we looked at a ramp solution, and it would require too much real estate around the block, so I think it is going to be an elevator. We pushed for a ramp. I believe we even had a conceptual drawing, and I can pull it back up. This was before it went out about 2 months ago. We reviewed all the designs. I made sure that it was like obscene, that the reasons to not do a ramp had to be very significant, and I remember feeling convinced, and I'm not that easily convinced. So,
Alex, if I can just quickly add something, you were talking about it being a model and whatever. While the Second Avenue subway was being built, it was promoted, and those of us who were involved with it going way back like 10 years ago, that because it was so deep.
Excuse me,
that
Judy.
the elevators,
Chris was next.
No,
I'm sorry.
Chris said he would let me bring this up first. Okay, thank you.
Chris,
That's
we may
why
not have time for you.
Chris and I.
'Cause it's
Very
2.
simply, I'm just letting you know that was what was supposed to be the elevators and escalators on the 3 stations of the Second Avenue subway were supposed to be also models for what should be going on afterwards. And I don't know if if you've used that or if you've paid attention. I don't know if that's been pointed out to you, but since you brought up about Dykeman Street and the work going on in Edith's neck of of the woods. I just thought I would talk about what had been going on in my neck of the woods.
Sure, got it. Well, we'll check into it. I mean, those are still quote unquote new in our system, and we have to see how reliable they are in the long term. But
Chris,
they were
you'll be
built
the
by
last
Conan.
one.
As I'm the last question person, Alex, I'm glad to see. I wish people stop. Let me say what I gotta say is, Alex, regarding the list now you're seeing with constructions. Now there were questions that was concern is, is Avenue H on the Q line going to have a ramp?
That is
On
getting
the
that is
northbound end, and
yeah.
then the other issue is also is if we're gonna do these constructions, I know in the past, and I know Debbie Holmore can bounce with me also, is because they do had some meetings with community boards and some of the community people, because to make clear to know if, say, there are some stations have to be construction or stations may have to be closed because of adding not just the elevator, but construction of making the station up to date. There is some people in the community, like Queens and Brooklyn, do get very concerned. So I hope we can, if we're going to do stations like 7th Avenue, we need to have a community meetings for those community people who cannot come all the way into Manhattan, because it is a challenge for them. So can we please make sure we do that? Also, if we're going to be doing the lap in the near future, let's also make sure that those things on the floor, like on J Street, they were good, but I agree with Stuart, they do fade away very quickly, even in the rain. When it's raining or snowing, they actually eat the salt from people's shoes, and it does take off very quickly. So there is a lot of things we need to work on.
Yeah, I'll answer the two questions. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, my voice is. So on the first question, which is station closures, I mean, our goal is to not close any stations during construction. I mean, stations will be closed on weekends and potentially at various other times. It may be possible that a design build contractor comes to the agency and says, hey, if you give me a 3-month closure, I'll deliver this project, 9 months sooner and for $10 million less or something of that sort. That would be, hey, this is something we should really consider. Everybody would consider it. But I will tell you this, the number one thing that often requires station closures is the platform work. So redoing the bump, redoing the tactile edges, because we can't run trains alongside that work. Oftentimes the elevator to the mezzanine in the street is somewhere else in the station. And if the track access is not impacted, we don't need to close the station. We are thinking about models where we may require these contractors to do everything with the elevator, getting down to the platform, but have a separate contractor or use some internal forces to do the platform work. We believe that this is something that contractors would really like, not because they don't like to work on the platforms, but they're often heavily delayed by, we promise a GO one weekend, we can't do a GO one weekend. So if we take that risk, that delay risk, that schedule risk away from the contractors and move it somewhere else, we believe we'll get projects done faster and more efficiently. So it's all about that edge work that plays the biggest role in a station closure, unless there's major mezzanine reconfigurations that are required to fit an elevator, in which case then it's not just the platform work, it's other work. About your second question, I addressed it earlier about the strips. I know that they're not perfect. I still believe that in many ways they provide a really good benefit. So, we may need to potentially, and I don't believe we've found what we are recommending as the ultimate solution, but even our ultimate recommendation may be an imperfect recommendation, but something that's still better. But TBD, let us try some of the stuff we're going to try at Grand Central with some of the new surfaces. And the technology just isn't quite there yet for a substance that sticks, that doesn't bother people's feet, that can be there permanently, that can survive a power wash, but at the same time not disappear under a power wash. So it's a lot of different factors we're asking from the tape, but
And
let's see where we go.
contrary to what Chris said, people in boroughs other than Brooklyn and Queens also care deeply.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
I think we must vacate, so thank you all.
Motion to adjourn.
Adopted. Thanks, everyone.